Hi everyone, and welcome to Washington Echoes, where we travel back through time. I'm Audrey Fletcher, and I'm here today to share with you how the Romans helped build the early Anglo-Saxon Church, the Church on the Hill, at Washington Village. Now, about the Anglo-Saxon hamlet of Wrekenton. Wrekenton translates into Geordie as Weshen, as in Washington. The Old Anglo-Saxon Wrekenton is a descriptive place name and translates as a washing place, meaning a body of water or marshy place. A later derivation of Wrekenton by the Anglo-Saxons was wessing, meaning soaking, and it is from this that Wessington sprang. Following the end of the last ice age, the previously locked-up glacial ice began to melt as temperatures rose, causing a rise in sea levels and soaking previously dry land. Indeed, much of eastern Durham was marshland. To the right of the screen we see an illustration of how Wrekenton may have looked in Anglo-Saxon times. So, how did the Anglo-Saxon hamlet of Wrekenton become the Anglo-Saxon hamlet of Washington? The numerous hills around Wrekenton were formed from glacial moraine during the meltdown of the last ice age. That is, piles of sand and stones were dumped to form hills when the glacier began its retreat. Ton at the end of a place name is generally held to mean town, but by no stretch of the imagination was Wessington a town when William de Wessington I held the land. In fact, Ton is a derivation of the Anglo-Saxon tor, meaning a prominent hill, and it denotes a holy hill, which was sacred to Venus and of special significance to the Druids. One such hill is that upon which the current Washington Village Church stands, a hill which originally extended down to the Washington Beck on its western and southern sides. The sacred hill at Washington Village was originally the site of a circular Celtic sacred grove, used for rituals and ceremonies and overseen by Druids. This is known because in 610 AD it was decreed by Pope Gregory that Christian churches be built on such sites. To keep the Celtic symbolism of the sacred grove, Anglo-Saxon churches were surrounded by a circular churchyard. Take a look at the pictures below. The Washington Village Church is still surrounded by the symbolic Celtic sacred grove today. Oh, a Celtic sacred grove suggests an Iron Age settlement in the local area. And here is an example of what the Anglo-Saxon hamlet of Wrekenton may have looked like. So far, the evidence for an early Anglo-Saxon church at Washington Village is circumstantial. However, the Washington Old Hall plays a significant part in providing the ultimate proof of an early Anglo-Saxon church in the Wrekenton hamlet, together with the evidence to be found in the local stone walls around the Washington Green area. To the left of the screen is a view of the front of the Washington Old Hall before it was renovated in the 1950s. And here is a view of the back of the renovated Washington Old Hall today. According to the ground plan to the left of the screen, there was no previous stone buildings on the site of the Old Hall, and so I shall be working with that assumption. William de Wessington I, ancestor of George Washington, began building Wessington Manor during the reign of Henry II, which accounts for the H-shaped design. This reflected his allegiance to the English king. It appears that there were only two rooms downstairs, the T-shaped Great Hall and the separate room beyond the double arch. However, there may have been another arch at the eastern end of the Great Hall. The photo at the far left of the screen shows the restored original front entrance facing north towards the church. And now we will investigate the Anglo-Saxon architecture of Wessington Manor. Today, the room beyond the previously mentioned double arch is a kitchen, complete with a possibly 17th century fireplace. But look carefully, and you will see an earlier arch above the fireplace. This can only have been part of the original structure by William de Wessington I. Local historian Christopher Bennett believed that the original arch over what is now the kitchen fireplace in the old hall was Anglo-Saxon. There is a picture of his sketch to the left of the screen. And you will notice a similar brickwork in the photo of an Anglo-Saxon doorway at Lady Chapel, Christ Church, Oxford University, dating back to about 727 AD. Fireplaces with chimneys came into use in the 12th century, at a time when William de Wessington I was building a new home for his wife, Countess Margaret, sister to William the Lion, King of Scotland. However, kitchens, and stairs replacing ladders, were not included as part of a house until 1604. So, assuming the arch of the fireplace to be Anglo-Saxon, where did it come from, and what was its original purpose? My proposal is that the original stone arch in the current kitchen is of ecclesiastical origin. My rationale is that at the same time that William de Wessington was building his new home, he was also renovating and remodelling the Anglo-Saxon Church, St. Mary's, in Wessington Village. Initially, the arch could have formed an archway, or possibly the outer section of a tomb recess. But as this became redundant during the church renovations, it is logical to assume that it was recycled and incorporated into the manor house, ideal for a new fireplace. Before renovations began in earnest on the old hall in 1951, it had been decided to represent the building as an example of 17th century architecture, with the result that many architectural features of the building from an earlier age were removed. A prime example of this is the keystone of the Anglo-Saxon arch above the fireplace, which, Christopher Bennett noted, was removed during renovation. Today the omission is concealed by the television. The photo to the left of the screen shows Fred Hill making a pre-restoration inspection. Even the arches, which are the most striking feature in the Great Hall, had their pre-17th century keystones removed. Fortunately, however, the ancient central column was left untouched. In this previously unpublished photo, the original arches, a stylistic feature of the new home of William de Wessington in the 12th century, were revealed during renovations. Wow, what a find! The script reads as follows: part of original manor house of the Washington family, 1183 to 1376, recently discovered in Washington Old Hall. The photo is courtesy of my friend, local historian Joan Nichols. Note how the original arches were round, not arched, and therefore not Norman. The original arches were of a much earlier period. The arches were reconstructed in the Norman style during the renovation in the 1950s. By omitting the keystones, the arches became more pointed and narrow. Now, remember that at the same time that William de Wessington was building his new home back in the 12th century, he was also remodelling the Anglo-Saxon Church, St. Mary's, in Wessington Village. So, just as he recycled the tomb recess for a fireplace, he also recycled this double archway. But hang on a minute. What happened to the Anglo-Saxon wattle and daub? Where did the Anglo-Saxons of Weshen acquire these advanced techniques of building in stone? I wonder, do you remember my YouTube video about Brugeford Chapel? Well, the original Anglo-Saxon church at Washington Village would have been not unlike Brugeford Chapel, a single-cell church built in the Roman style and using Roman materials from the nearby abandoned Roman forts. And the architecture of Brugeford Chapel and the Anglo-Saxon Church at Washington Village were based upon their mother church of St. Paul's at Jarrow Monastery, 685 AD. The Anglo-Saxon Church at Wrekenton was built using the same traditional methods as Monk Wearmouth Jarrow, and very probably by the same Francia builders, brought over by Abbot Benedict in 674. The building materials were readily available from the nearby Wrekenton and Chesley Street Roman forts. So, the materials which William de Wessington recycled from the Anglo-Saxon village church to use in his new manor house were Roman. In comparing these pictures, you will notice how the Roman doorways to both St. Peter's Church at Monk Wearmouth and the Anglo-Saxon part of the Washington Village Church are identical, and therefore both of Roman origin. And here are further examples of Roman arches in the style of the fireplace at Leicester and at Hadrian's Wall. Moreover, the Anglo-Saxon arch or doorway on the green at Washington Village was also from a nearby Roman fort at Wrekenton or Chesley Street, and would also have been recycled from the Anglo-Saxon village church by William de Wessington in the 12th century, reusing it as the entrance to a 12th century vault. An almost identical Roman arch was reused at Jarrow Monastery about 685 AD. And here we have a view of the inside of the 12th century vault behind the Roman doorway on the village green. A further example of Roman masonry, which had been recycled to build the Anglo-Saxon village church, St. Mary's, can be found nestled in the stone walls at Washington Village. Look carefully at this stone above, and you will see a star carved into Roman diamond broaching stonework. This stone was from the demolished Anglo-Saxon church. Further evidence of an early Anglo-Saxon church at Washington Village include these Anglo-Saxon Christian crosses, carved onto stones and found in walls around the Washington Village Green. This stone in Washington Village is writing of unknown origin. Is it perhaps Roman, the name of a legion? After all, the Romans did used to stamp the name of their legions into their bricks. This is my interpretation of how the early Anglo-Saxon church at Washington Village would have looked when it was first built, possibly around 685 AD. Based upon nearby Brugeford Chapel, it would have been a single-cell church built in the Roman style and using Roman materials from the nearby abandoned Roman forts at Wrekenton or Chesley Street. Furthermore, it would have been attached to the Jarrow, Monk Wearmouth Benedictine monasteries. Well everyone, I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation and have been inspired to search around the Washington Green area for further evidence of an Anglo-Saxon community, the community of Wrekenton. I look forward to sharing my continued research into Washington history with you in my next video. Bye for now.